meeting of the Harbor and Coastal Zone Management Commission. If you're on already, you may also be aware that we are live on LMC-TV on our usual Zoom channel, and we are live streaming now on our YouTube channel. So if for any reason you lose your connectivity, you can follow it that way. And if you're paying attention, thank you for caring about Village of Harris. We have only one agenda item tonight, but before that, I just want to mention as a housekeeping matter that it's been a while since we did a consistency training, and we have new personnel. So we're working with Steve Ressler to set up a new consistency training. We'll get that done as quickly as possible. In the meantime, we've got an applicant as our only significant agenda item for the evening. That's 921 Soundview, and let's call that applicant now.
So I'm having trouble accessing the agenda online.
I just re-forwarded it to you to your personal email.
Oh, the same email or? Oh,
no, to your personal. Yep, I sent it to your personal.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm gonna promote. Just raise your hand, whoever wants to be promoted, who's part of the application, please. Because I have a couple different names. Thank you. Okay. All right, everybody.
I'm sorry, are the documents, whoops.
Those are under the, I could send you the link.
Yeah, okay. Because I just see the agenda, not the.
All right, I'll send that over to you.
Thank you. Something has been screwy today.
Good evening. We have Ms. Tyler, Mr. Pilch, Ms. Evans. We're on for our preliminary review of this project. I want to disclose at the outset that I had a pre-meeting many months ago with some members of the applicant's team. It's a procedure that is used more commonly in other municipalities than historically it has been with Village of Mamaroneck, Harbor Coastal. And just to remind the applicant and let the public know, if an applicant chooses to meet in advance with members of the commission, that's fine, but we should, and in this instance did tell them that we can't speak for any other commissioner's vote. We can't and won't prejudge our own vote, and we can't tell them how we're going to come out on anything. What we can do is tell them how we think about particular problems, and we can help an applicant streamline and prepare their application by telling them how we interpret the various provisions that we apply, and help them understand what sort of things we would need to ask or know or to take into consideration. We did that, and now we've got the applicant before us, and for a preliminary review, it is, at least in the first instance, your show. So go ahead and tell us what you want to tell us about your application, and then I expect we're going to have some questions.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for the introduction. So my name is Jacqueline Tyler, and I'm with Nexus Creative, and I'm joined tonight with Alan and Beth, who will also be walking through portions of the project. Am I able to screen share?
That is Brittany's department.
Yep, you are.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So I'm going to start, let me flip through. I was having the same internet problems you were, not able to access the agenda. So it's all over the place tonight. So So I'm just going to walk you through the project, and then I'm going to hand it over to Alan and Beth to speak on the wetlands portion specifically, and I'm going to keep my comments regarding the architecture portion. I do want to point out that we are in receipt of the memos from both Kellard and Planning Department, and so we are looking at the comments that were mentioned in those, and we'll be continuing to address those items. We've preliminarily looked at them as a team, but we haven't had a chance. The submission to you was due prior to us getting those comments. So we haven't been able to incorporate any of those comments into the presentation for this evening, but we are looking at them, and I'll kind of touch on a couple of those that we are looking at as I walk you through the project. So this application, it's a vacant property. You may be familiar along the Otter Creek side. It was formerly owned, what you see here listed as 10 and 1. These used to be owned by the same owner at one time, and they eventually sold what is labeled as lot 10 here. And they have maintained the what you see in the yellow border here, which is 921 Soundview. And they've continued to pay taxes on this property, and they've been holding on to its part. It was part of the mother's estate, who is no longer here. And so the family is looking to develop this property as a single family residence. So this is just an aerial. You can see we've tried to color code this to make it as clear as possible. There is a current fence, which I'll show you, and Beth will speak on this a little bit further. So what you see indicating the purple line is a fence that's been there for a long time across the rear of the property, which is also flagged as the Wetlands Edge. So in looking at the property, what you'll see, we've incorporated the setbacks, which are orange. The cyan line here that you see, that's the 100-foot required wetlands buffer to eliminate the review. And you'll see there's barely any portion of the lot that is actually buildable outside of that wetlands buffer. So what we've attempted to do is take advantage of as much of that front end area. We've held the building located exactly on the front property, front setback line, in order to pull that back away from the wetlands as best as possible, with keeping a majority of the house, I would say, outside, with the exception of the rear, this rear portion here, and the raised deck. So these will all be up on pylons. And speaking to the planning board, one of the items that was requested by Kellard are some additional soil testing. So once that soil testing is done, we'll then be able to determine the information for the pylons and the structural supports and what's required there. What you'll also see is you see a pool. We want to clarify that is a saltwater pool. So there won't be the typical chemicals that are associated with a pool. And we're doing that as well to address the wetlands and keep the chemicals out of the area. Again, this is just a site plan walking us through the general location. Here you'll see the building is proposed in the dark gray area. We've attempted to keep, we understand that the wetlands buffer is the 100-foot. We've also looked at a 50-foot, knowing that we're still within that zone, but attempting to keep all of the structure and disturbance outside of the 50-foot, which was just another milestone in our heads of trying to maintain a distance away from the wetlands. I'll walk through these quickly because I know we're not looking at the architecture so much here, but we do have a walkout basement along the bottom portion. We're taking advantage of the slope. And I'm going to actually jump to that quickly so you guys can see this. So the property itself slopes down towards the wetlands. So the construction will be up on the hillside. Alan is working with Kellards with the disturbance and making sure that there's no runoff from the construction down into the wetlands area, and he'll continue to work with that portion. I'll let him speak on that a little bit further. This is taken, back from the wetlands area. This is just a rendering of what we envision the building to look like. Again, you can see this will all be raised in order to minimize the disturbance at the ground level for the wetlands. These are some shots that we had taken probably about a year ago now, maybe a little bit less. We wanted to just kind of understand what's happening on the property. There are some trees, you can see them in some of the photos, that have started to fall down on the property. So we just wanted to keep record of the status of the property on our end, but we also thought it was helpful so everybody could see what was going on from bird's eye view. Lastly, this is a site section all the way across the property. So you can see the rear property line here on the left-hand side. And you'll see that we're significantly higher with our first floor elevation than we are with the wetlands, which are flagged at the 12.5, and our first floor elevation is 32 feet. With that, I'm going to actually turn this over to Alan, and I'll let him speak, and I'll pull up your drawings, Alan, while you're starting your portion.
Myself, here I am. Yeah, if you want to pull up the I'm going to say, yeah, you can start with the site layout plan, but I think the next plan and the set's a better one to go with. Correct. What you can see here on this plan is the general layout of the house on the left-hand side. You know, it's labeled as such. The driveway, which is leading to, you know, a garage in the house. And you can see from, this is a stormwater plan essentially, and there's a trench drain at the base of the driveway, and roof drain leaders from the house collect runoff from the house and will convey it to a stormwater management practice, which is to consist of 8 Caltech 330 XLHD chambers, and the runoff from the house and the driveway. So which essentially all of the new impervious surfaces will be conveyed into the chambers. And the modeling that was done for the chambers shows that for, I'll say at the design point, which is the eastern end of the property, I'll call it the eastern end, on the right-hand side, closest, you know, into the wetland, that there was no increase in the peak rate of runoff for all the modeled storms, which is the 1 through 100-year storm. In addition, I'd just like to point out that the modeling also showed that there was no runoff coming out of the chambers during the 1-year storm. And typically one tries to at least capture and treat the water quality volume, which is 1.5 inches of precipitation. Here, these chambers have been designed to accommodate or completely capture and treat the about 2.8 inches of rainfall, which is the 1-year storm. And this was done using a very, very conservative soil infiltration rate of 1 inch per hour, which is very, very slow in soils such as we anticipate encountering here. I do know that we will be performing deep hole and percolation tests within the footprint of the stormwater management practice, and that will be done soon. Obviously, the winter weather makes it a little bit challenging because the ground is frozen and very often snow covered, but we will do that testing, and that testing will be witnessed by representatives of Keller Sessions Consulting. So that's essentially what the stormwater management plan does. They say what it does, it takes all the impervious surfaces, the house roof, the driveway, and conveys that runoff in the storm drainage pipe, which are those dark lines that are shown on the plan, and conveys it into the stormwater chambers where the runoff has an opportunity to infiltrate into the ground. And infiltration, as you know, is an extremely good way to renovate stormwater runoff and clean it, removing pollutants. And so that's the general stormwater management plan that is being proposed. And as Jacqueline noted too, there's also a comprehensive erosion sediment control plan, but we don't have to go into that right now. But if you, there is a plan, okay, there it is, which shows at the furthest end of the call it the eastern end, if you will, or the right side, a double line of silt fence. There's construction fencing to limit the disturbance on the property and make sure that it is limited to just the areas which are to be constructed upon. Also shown on the plan too are other features such as soil stockpiles, inlet protection. These are all shown on the property, which would be designed in accordance with the New York State standards, the 2016 state standards. And with that, I guess I'll pass it on to Beth if you want to discuss the wetland impacts. Is there any questions too?
Well, let me, good evening. Let me just quickly add to what Alan has said. Also on this plan, you can see the flood zone, the AE zone, and all of the construction and improvements to this lot are proposed outside of the flood zone. The wetland, of course, is part of the Otter Creek Marsh wetland system, which is a tidal estuary type system that proceeds up to McGidd Pond near Taylor's Lane. I know this commission is very familiar with this marsh and its all its features. The fence, the remains of the fence that are shown, I'm sure were put up many years ago. And when I first went out to this site, the fence was still standing, and it was very clear that there was a change in vegetation at the fence line. The fence has since been knocked down to some extent, but again, the marsh really starts at the lower portion of this lot, and the upper portion where you see the proposed development has been maintained over the years as a meadow or a lawn area associated with the surrounding residences. As Alan said, the stormwater measures are intended to infiltrate any runoff into the soil so that it will travel through the soil to the marsh, towards the marsh. And most of the impervious areas have been kept as high on the site as possible. These are 1 foot contours that are shown on this plan. And as you can see, there's a level plateau area in the middle, and then it rises very steeply up to Soundview Drive and somewhat steeply slopes down toward the wetland. Again, I'd be happy to answer questions, but I think that sums up what we're proposing to do.
Okay, so it's the chair's privilege to go first if I choose to do so. So I think I'm going to lead off with my questions. I have a few. Just to sort of orient us, I'm sort of seeing the concerns around 3 policies and in sort of 3 buckets. The policies in play, to me, are predominantly 7A, because Otter Creek is a sensitive environmental area. It's a critical environmental area under our LWRP, even though it's not a state identified one that would bring 7 into play. 12, because the marsh is a natural protective feature that we need to protect us from coastal flood, from tidal flooding. And if that marsh were to experience a significant die-off, for example, we would lose a significant protective feature. And 44, of course, wetland protection, with which we're all fairly familiar, because that comes into play almost every wetlands application. I'm sort of thinking about 3 sets of concerns. One is the stormwater and SWIP issue, where we've had some discussion already, and I think we've advanced the ball already before I even started asking questions. There's the construction aspect, making sure that all the work can get done in this place without the construction itself causing a problem. And the third is the pool. Now, all of this is against the backdrop where the lot itself is almost ski slope like. The drop from approximately 34 feet down to 12, it loses 20 feet in the space in which almost this house will be built. So anything that goes down that fall line, we have to treat as though it ends up in the sensitive environmental area. So we have to take almost everything as though, if it runs down the slope, what's its impact on the wetland when it gets there? So when we think about stormwater, I noted the extensive comments from the Kellard Sessions memo, and we've got John Kellard with us tonight. We have concerns around the street flooding on Soundview. I need to think about whether water on Soundview and all the road runoff and the stuff that goes with it, and rubber and exhaust and road silt and sand and salt, whether roadborne pollutants are going to get swept over the very short level portion of this lot into the back in circumstances of high precipitation and high winds during a storm, that wouldn't get there now because there's a fair amount of vegetation in the way, et cetera. Whether there is and whether the data for the SWIP is complete. Now that's someplace where we've already made progress. Perhaps predictably, I was going to ask a question about the data, the assumptions that were made to the infiltration rate and whether we needed deep hole tests and real world data. That concern's been laid aside already. If I understood you right, Mr. Pilch, you know that you need to do the deep hole tests. You're going to do those.
Oh yes, absolutely. It's just that in the deep of January and February, it's a challenge.
Sure. Okay. Well, this is a preliminary review and identifying concerns is what we're here for. So that the two major things I'm thinking about with the SWIP is getting real world data to ground the assumptions, and then making sure that that we're not worried about anything on the other side of the curve becoming something in Otter Creek. Then we've got, and if there's more than that, I may turn back to John Kellard for a few minutes later to make sure that that we're all on the same page about what we need to understand. Then there's the construction aspect. The double silt fencing goes a long way. I'm gonna want an engineer or consultant to walk me through the best practices for the construction to make sure I know everything I need to know about whether those measures are going to be sufficient to make sure that nothing that happens during the construction process ends up in Otter Creek. And finally, I think the pool, I guess I don't mean to over dramatize it to sort of use a broad illustration, but to put a bunch of liquid on stilts above that slope, in a very loose sense, we could sort of say that's an environmental bomb. Now, it's a lot less of a scary environmental bomb if it's composed of salt water rather than chlorinated water, because chlorinated pool water is meant to make sure nothing can live in it. Salt water sounds a lot better to me, but then I'm neither a chemist nor a wetland scientist. I have to think about both the possibility, however slim, that some of that water or all of it could end up going down the slope, and then what it would mean for the wetland environment if it did. And I'm going to need some consultants to walk me through that. So what I'm looking at that I know that I need now in order to intelligently vote on the application. We need, of course, the the SWIP to be complete, and I'll turn it over to John Keller in just a second for that. We need to make sure that we fully understand the SWIP, that all the work that needs to be done for that is complete. We need to make, we need a site visit, because this, I just feel like I won't fully understand this application until we've gone out there. Even though I know where it is, I know what it looks like, but sometimes you just need a site visit. We're going to need, as we always require when there's building in the 100-foot buffer, the opinion of a wetland scientist that building in the buffer area will have no adverse impact to the wetlands that the buffer protects. It is, obviously you've already thought of that, and you realize that's the standard we enforce, because you've brought along with you Beth Evans. And while I did not see an opinion in the initial packet, nor would I've expected to. Obviously, the applicant's team anticipates that that's the standard we've enforced for years, and that they're going to need a similar opinion. You've brought somebody that that historically has given those opinions in a capable and professional way. Okay, so you have to do that. And I'm telling you that you're going to have to do that. I am also going to have our own environmental consultant take a look at this project and give us an independent opinion about several things. I want to make sure that those trees don't look like they're in great condition, but I am going to want to know that by removing trees on the lot, we're not damaging a living ecosystem that the village needs. I would be surprised if that were the case, but I'm going to want the record that that's not a problem. But mostly we need somebody to back up the thinking about the impact of anything that rolls down the hill. And specifically, I really keep thinking about the pool. How many gallons is in the pool as designed?
I don't have that number. I can definitely get that to you. And just to clarify for everybody as well, it's not like a typical full height pool, like deep pool. We've actually been referring to these a lot. We've done a couple of them out like in Montauk and Sag Harbor as well, as a spool. It's kind of a spa / pool combination. So we're looking more at like a shallower. So it's not a full like in-ground, but we can definitely get that answer for you for the gallons.
So I guess okay, so that's the list of things that I know now that I need. I guess first I want to ask Chris Robbins from AKRF. We have transitioned to using you folks for environment in the first instance, and for on this one, I'm going to need a consultant to deal with both pool construction and also the environmental impact of potential environmental impact of an escape of liquid from a saltwater pool. Can you folks provide the consulting services on that?
Yeah, we should be able to. I mean, the wetlands piece is not a problem. You had mentioned trees on the site. That can be easily dealt with a site visit. I'm not sure that we have an expert on saltwater pools and what that water is made. Sort of the salinity of that particular water. We could probably find that out and look at what that would mean for discharge into the wetland, which is tidal and probably brackish at best, maybe even salty. So we'd have to take a look at the sort of what the composition of the existing condition is and what the salinity of the pool water is, to try to do a comparison of the two for you.
Yeah, the record I need to in order to think about this, and I mean in part for the folks watching at home, when we raise a concern, there are sort of two things that can happen to that concern. Either we can get more information, which convinces us that it is not a bar to a finding of consistency with whatever policy it is we're looking at, or the application can change such that it takes the concern out of play. in order to understand the concerns I've raised fully, I'm going to need a consultant who's able to talk about the impact of the pool water if it happens to meet that sensitive environment. I'm also going to need somebody who can adequately speak to pool construction, who can talk about how, what is necessary under these circumstances on this lot to make sure that the pool water does not meet the environment that we're trying to protect here. Okay, so we've got two aspects. We've got pool construction, we've got pool chemistry that we're going to need consulting on. Aside from that, I feel almost silly raising this, but I would be remiss if I didn't. There's no existing structure on the property, so there's nothing that would raise a historic issue. The fence, which I think now may be mostly, I think I heard that the fence is now mostly down. That's not a historic structure of any kind, right? Wouldn't be a listable. Okay.
No, it was an old, I'm drawing a blank on what they're called.
Post and rail.
Post and rail. Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. That's what I'm sure I need. I did say that I was going to ask John Keller. John, am I thinking about the SWIP right? That the major concerns we have right now are that we need to see what the hole tests look like, and that we need to make sure that the front of the property is shaped so that what is on Sound View does not end up in Otter Creek.
Correct. Alan had prepared a SWIP for the project, which addresses erosion controls, addresses water quality, and addresses water quantity issues. He's required by our code to design for a 25-year storm. He went over and above that, he designed for a 100-year storm. I went through his calculations. He's correct that 95% of the rainfall, excuse me, rainfall events that occur each year, that's up to the 1-year storm, will not have any discharge from the stormwater system if his infiltration tests prove out to be at or better infiltration than what he projected in his calculations. And he did project a very slow infiltration rate. We need the deep hole tests to confirm that we have adequate soil between the bottom of the system and any impervious layer, which is a state requirement, which Alan knows very well. I'm sure he's designed many of these systems and knows what's required here. And that's what we had requested in our memo, is that those tests be performed so that we can confirm that the system will act as he has designed it. One of my other concerns is any discharge from that system. Now, 95% of the storms, you won't have discharge. But when you have a storm event that's greater than 1 year, you will. The applicant has proposed a flow spreader in the backyard. We just need to look at that in more detail to make sure that we're not going to have a concentrated flow going down the hill that could cause erosion. Possibly the applicant can propose something that further dissipates those flows. Maybe it's a larger flow spreader, maybe it's discharge at various points, but we're concerned about any concentrated flows. And that will also occur with the footing drain system, whether it's probably going to be a gravity system, but it's not shown on the plan. And we asked the applicant to show where the footing drains would discharge and to dissipate that flow also. So the concern is to avoid any concentrated flows that might cause erosion that will carry sediments down into Otter Creek. Regarding the flows from Soundview Avenue, as the site is presently graded, there's a possibility that runoff from the road could come through this site into the drainage system, into the treatment system, and flow into Otter Creek. We asked the applicant to take a look at the grading along the roadway and along the property frontage to make sure that that water in Soundview Avenue stays within Soundview Avenue. It doesn't appear that it would require much grading, and it looks like something they could accomplish. We asked them to take a look at that. The next concern is obviously during construction and whether the silt fences, the double silt fence is enough to protect the slope in Otter Creek during the construction. We asked the applicant to look at other means, other levels of protection during the construction phase. We suggested one method may be to install a temporary sediment basin, which would be sized to collect the runoff from the disturbed portion of the property during construction, and possibly use the excavation for the foundation as another sump area that would collect. So you wouldn't have discharge from that area. You would filter it and possibly pump the water from the excavation into the sediment basin and then filter that before it's discharged out of the temporary basin. But we're asking them to look at additional measures during construction, because it's probably when you have your most critical point where if you're impact's gonna occur, it's gonna occur during the construction phase. We had some other housekeeping comments. We asked that the applicant analyze the cut and fill for the site and confirm that the stockpile locations shown on the plan are adequate for the cuts and fills that are going to occur on the property, so that we don't find out during construction that we need more area and disturb more portions of the site. Those were the main, I think they were the main points I had brought up in relationship to the wetlands.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I've sort of monopolized the session so far, but it's time to go around the horn. Commissioner Sellier.
My main question is, I take it that the applicant is going to present a memorandum responding in detail to each of the points that in the Keller Sessions memo, most of which we've covered. But, I take it that's the next thing, or one of the next things that's going to happen.
Yes,
So
that is indeed the case.
Point by point.
Yes.
So I mean, obviously, I think between the chairman and Mr. Keller, they've kind of gone through it, and those are the pretty obvious concerns. I walk by that area, and it's obviously quite a slope. And my wife and I have remarked, gee, is that really a buildable lot? But I guess now we think it is, but obviously, the concerns need to be addressed about basically stuff flowing down into that preserve. And that. So, yeah. So I guess I look forward to the kind of point by point addressing these issues that have been raised.
Commissioner Lusk.
Commissioner Lusk is a complete rookie. Could you go back before you go forward? How did you know to ask the questions that you asked? When did you get this? When was the first piece filed? I'm just missing the middle.
Oh, you're asking when the application came in?
I just don't understand how. I mean, I hear this, but I can't see it yet. So,
Well, I had a bit of an advantage since we had a pre-meet, so I
right, I heard you.
I sort of understood where they were going with this anyway, but we've had we've had some difficulty in our normal communication because of this switchover from private emails to village emails. And I think this has been we have sort of dropped out of our routine of ordinary communication, but we've usually got somewhere around 3 weeks to review the applicant materials when they go up, and then we've usually got a week or so on the Kellard Sessions memo. That may not
You're being
have happened
kind
for
to
all
me.
of us.
I'm just asking how this works, and the stuff goes to John first.
John sees it in preparation.
I'm sorry, I just don't know how we get from.
Let's take we'll do the procedural. I'll take up the sort of procedural 101 with you offline, because I don't want
Okay, fine.
I don't want to do that in front of with the applicants here.
They obviously understand it.
Yeah, I understand what you're asking. You're and I know you're brand new to this. It's a steep learning curve. I'll circle back to you on sort of the nuts and bolts procedure stuff.
The chairman asks such insightful questions because he is a hardworking genius.
Got it.
Randy, you're extremely kind. I remember when I was just starting in my own firm 20 years ago, little more than 20 years ago, I said to somebody about some horrible, huge document, how do you find anything in these things? And he looked at me, he said, you read them. There's, most of us lack, tremendous technical knowledge in at least some of the areas that we deal with, and instead we substitute learning how to ask the right question. Right? I did not write the stormwater design manual. I am not a wetland scientist, but I read it, and if I don't understand what's being told to me, I either decide that I need a consultant to explain it to me, or that I need the applicant to give me more information, or both. And so most of my questions are, I read this seemed strange to me. Can you explain that to me? Or I read this and I know I'm going to need a consultant to make sure that I understand this before I can cast an intelligent vote. So mostly what we do is identify things that we're not sure that we can make sense of before we vote. And then we say, you need to make this make sense to me before I vote. All right. Commissioner Tobias.
Hi, everybody. Pretty much one of my things only thing I've discussed is I know that there was another property, 742 Soundview, that was a vacant lot that was had a new build on it as well. And from what I heard, there was some issues with flooding on that new build property, so I just wanted to, I guess that's one of my concerns, is how does that property compare to this? Because I know it's on the other side, but it already had runoff issues and flooding. And I don't know if you're aware of it, or if that was something that is taken into consideration or calculated.
We will definitely look into that and get back to you on it.
Okay.
I think if I remember correctly, also the Kellard Sessions memo may have raised some concern about increased runoff to the adjacent properties, or if not, I saw something that indicated to me that might be a concern. That's when we circle back on this for consistency determination. Let's make sure that we can be sure that the neighbors aren't going to experience more runoff because of the proposed condition.
Yes, the applicant has proposed swales along, well, they regraded along the property lines on each side of the home. We asked them to develop a more defined swale, at least 12 inches deep, to be assured that any runoff from the front lawn going towards the back is contained on this property and not onto the neighbor's property.
Right.
All right, I think we may have run through our questions. And so I think at this point, we don't need to wait for anything to set up the site visit. I will have our staff coordinate with the applicant to see when we can all do. I'm pretty sure I won't be able to do it within the next 2 weeks, but pretty shortly after that, we should be able to schedule a site visit. By then, we will want to make sure that any consultants we have are lined up and come out. We're going to want a wetland scientist. We're going to want to make sure that that person is comfortable with the chemistry and salinity concerns, able to speak to, other than salt, what's in saltwater pool water, that sort of thing. Even if we don't yet know what the pool construction is going to be in final form, we certainly know what's going to be in it. We're going to want that expertise with us for the site visit. So we got a big list of things that we need to learn before we're going to be in a position to cast a vote on this thing. And with that, I think probably we have concluded tonight's business, unless somebody has something else.
I have I have a procedural question to go back. It's different though. So to your point, in regards, you guys have some things to do on your end. We don't know, obviously, in order for us to get the information to you, we need to do the testing. So there is a good possibility that we won't be ready for the submission for this we're in February, for the March meeting. So my question is, do we have to just send in a letter asking to adjourn that until April, or what do you need from us?
No, we put it on when it's the opposite of that. We don't assume that you're on for the next meeting.
Okay.
We don't put it on until the applicant tells the staff that we are ready to put it on. And just because, some applicants, the applicant team has been before us a lot, and some applicants have not, and you haven't been around with us a lot. Our procedures accord a great deal of control over the application to the applicant. We don't have rules, for example, that bar new submissions or changes. If an applicant finds in the middle of a process, hey, if we make a major change to this process, we think we can lay aside several of the concerns, we'll let you go ahead and change it. We never tell an applicant it's too late, we're done, we're going to vote. You decide when you've got the application that you're comfortable with us voting on in front of us. We'll tell you what our concerns are as clearly and succinctly as we can. We'll tell you what information we want. We'll express, when we think an alternative needs to be considered, or when something raises a problem that is going to give us heartburn in the vote. But ultimately, it's your application. And so if you want to modify it, if you want to change it, if you need to kick it over a month or more because you've got more information coming, we are going to be fine with that. We will vote when you want us to vote, and we think we know enough.
Great. Sounds good. I appreciate that. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your evening, and we will see you either next month or probably the following month.
Okay, and we have a quick closeout issue at the end, but we can, I think, drop the applicant team at this point. Thank you, folks, for your time.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, too. Appreciate it.
Okay. The last thing we have up is we were supposed to do minutes. I like to have a chance to go through them and make sure that I agree with how they're written before we vote on them. I did not have the chance to do that for the 2 sets of minutes we've got up. So if it doesn't annoy everybody too much, I'm going to ask that we kick those over. We don't have any other agenda items tonight, so I think we can adjourn, and we're going to see this applicant again with a lot more information. So we will be in touch to set up a site visit as quickly as we can, so we can all go out and see it, because that really does sort of help crystallize thinking about the project. And with that, I will make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
You're going to get with me and give me how this works. I just want to say I have no idea how you can authorize yourself to get a consultant. So, like, I don't have the basic bandwidth to follow the conversation.
It's been a rough transition. So we had meant to have the consistency training done already, and it just hasn't happened yet. So that will help a lot. I'll catch you up.
Thank you.
Okay. So with that, I think I move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Right.
And we are closed.